Very pleased to have back with us on the show Mike Poorman. Michael, how have you been?
Great, Steve. I have a question for you. And I know you did the play-by-play of that A's game in 1859.
I did.
Who was your color analyst?
My color analyst was Christy Mathewson's father.
Nice.
So there you go. That was best I could come up with on short notice.
Well, you're going to tell me you also broadcast Montgomery Ward games in Bellefonte when he was growing up. I know you go back that far.
Well, I did, and Judge Brown's grandfather was my analyst. So
keep them coming.
Mike, we're going to go a couple different directions here. But I'm going to start with the article that you wrote recently about money that, even without name, image, and likeness, that a college football player, basketball player can earn before they even get to NIL. It takes some research to do to come up with that. But what fascinated you about the numbers when you were putting them together?
Well, thanks for reading. I did see the story got one click on it, so that must have been you. I appreciate it. Well, and you as an educator, but also as a journalist, I don't think people talk enough about, they say players aren't getting paid, but the compensation is, I don't want to say extraordinary, but the compensation is very good. If you're an out-of-state athlete at the Power 5 level, your education's worth over $300,000, and then when you throw in when you throw in cost of attendance money, and very soon Penn State will add in Austin academic reward money that many other institutions are already doing, you're looking at another $45,000 in cash over 4 years. So it's a heck of a compensation level.
You also added in, I believe the number I've always operated with, and your number may be different, but at least 40%, I always thought, based on in talking with people, got Pell Grant money. And that's always left out of stories, and you didn't leave it out. You made sure it was in there.
No, and you're right. You know your stuff. You and I know that it's around 40%. Schools have to submit to the NCAA their annual financial reports. And so at Penn State for football last year was close to 40%. And so you're looking at another $5,000 per year. And that's based on financial needs. So I'm not taking that away from them. But then you're looking at a financial package of $65,000 over 4 years, tax-free, which, with taxes would be $100K. So I'm all in favor of Sean Clifford signing autographs for money. In fact, last summer I drove down to Harrisburg, put down my $30 for a photo and an autograph for his very first event, because I do believe in that, but I also believe that we undervalue what they're already getting.
Right. And again, you and I are two guys that are I'm all for whatever you can get, name, image, and likeness. That's great. At the same time, I thought the article was thoughtful in pointing out there's a laundry list of items that at least do get some cash into their pockets. And if they live off campus, they'll get even more, because there is an allowance to do that as well.
This is where I thought you were going to go with that, and of course you're right, is there's a laundry list of personal training, coaching,
yes,
medical care, apparel, film study, media coaching, branding, access to film highlights, graphics. Boy, if you put a price on that, and you should, then you're looking at 4 years is $500,000 of compensation. Not bad.
Well, I tell people all the time, so how much would it cost to rent James Franklin for a year? How much would it cost to rent Mike Krzyzewski for a year? Jaywan Sider, John Shire. How much would it cost to rent Dwight Galt, and his staff? Now, of course, it's Chuck Losey. How much would it cost to have Andy Mutnam at your disposal? How much would it cost to have Wayne Sebastianelli at your disposal? Leanne in nutrition. How much would it cost? All these people that are considered entourage by today's pro athlete, you've already got at your disposal on the college level.
It is an entourage, and I love that HBO series.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Larry David.
You would appreciate this as a guy who's taught the core sports broadcasting course at Penn State for almost 2 decades. Is I do this my first day of class. I figure out a 15 credit load, and then divide that up by 1 class. So the first day of class, I tell kids, if there was a cover charge to come in today's class, just for tuition, not room and board, not fees, not anything else, that 1 class for an in-state student is worth $75. For an out-of-state student, it's $128. There's value to an education.
Oh, there's no question about that. And there's another element too, Mike. What about the element of being able to leave college and the vast majority graduate, right, debt free? That's something. Your children, my children, they've all had to pay back student loans, although it's been on hold here for the last couple of years. But they've had to pay back student loans. These guys, these athletes don't have to do that.
And you're speaking as an educator, as a guy who's been around college sports for decades, and also as a dad. You're absolutely right. And believe me, I think we're aligned in that there's certain opportunities where college athletes should be able to profit off their name and
yes.
image. However, again, I'm beating the value. If you want to be a sports broadcaster, now, if you're Michael Robinson, Michael was a student of yours, right?
Yes.
So 1 class with Steve Jones for Michael Robinson had a value of $75. I'm not saying he only ended up on the NFL Network because of you, but there was immense value when someone's playing days are over.
Right. They're able to harness what they've majored in, and for the most part, and with the connections they make, it does open a lot of doors. When they do a job fair, and they do a job fair every year, they have a lot of people that are taking a long, hard look at them, and they're able to go through and talk with them in interviews. So, I think it's the entire experience from financial planning, which they do. They have to go through that. Job fairs, things like that. They get much more than just the education of sitting in a classroom.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So, what do you think of this football team? The blue-white game is always kind of hard to tell because you're going up against yourself. So, but what do you think? What do you think about this football team?
Well, I'll be honest. I don't know. And you're there every day. You and I know you're there every day. You see what's going on, and I'm in once a week with the media. But this is most years you have an idea of what's going to happen. It could be 7-5. It could be 10-2. There are just so many intangibles. And as much as I was a fan of Brent Pry, it's kind of exciting to see what Manny Diaz is going to do with that defense.
What do you think about Sean Clifford coming back for his 6th year?
Well, I think his wife and 3 kids and his 401k.
Well, it was interesting because I introduced him, and the trivia question was, "Who's been here longer, me or him?" And so
you had him beat by a little bit. If Cliff stays healthy,
yeah,
I think he has a great shot. I did a piece about 2 months ago, maybe 3, comparing his first 3 years versus Kenny Pickett's first 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And guess whose stats, and not just stats, because stats aren't always the story, stats, but also, and this was amazing, touchdown passes. Cliff had a better first 3 years than Kenny Pickett did.
Right.
And I told Sean and sent him to it. He goes, "Yeah, you're right. He can be Kenny Pickett."
Well, the opportunity certainly is there. There's no question about that for him, and there's no doubt who the leader of the team is. Because when I look back at the Iowa game, Mike, he gets hurt, and the drive ends up in a field goal. They're up 17-3. Mustipher went out in the first series defensively in the game, and I had said to Jack Ham during the break after Sean went out, I said, well, if I could handpick one guy on offense and one guy on defense to be out as the two worst guys to have out, it would be those two right there. And getting both of them back, what can that mean on both sides of the ball?
Well, I think you bring up a point that probably not many people are talking about enough, is getting Mustipher back, not only to anchor that defensive line. And I think Izzard and Ellie's progressed a lot with the opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
They had acres of opportunities last year, but not only but like Sean on the other side. I mean, he's literally and figuratively and metaphorically the anchor of that defense.
Mm-hmm.
As exciting and as important Brown is at the back end, Mustipher as the centerpiece of that defensive line is almost as important as Sean coming back.
You're always coming up with different ideas, whether it's as a teacher or as a writer. What are a couple of elements that are running through your mind right now, either as a teacher or as a writer, you want to explore next?
Wow. Good question, Steve Jones. I think, and it's interesting to hear your take on this, is, it's our business in sports communications, sports industry, sports journalism, broadcasting, is not static. The chemical formula in Chem 101 stays the same from year to year.
Right.
These days, there's many of my lectures that when you go from spring to fall, they're already stale. I mean, it's a just-in-time inventory at this point when you're looking at NIL and streaming and transfer portal and media rights, and really things are happening so fast that in many ways, what I do is as much of a current events class as it is. I teach a sports industry class as an overview of the industry. When I started a dozen years ago, there was a textbook, and after 2 years, I threw the textbook away because it was outdated. Now, something from last semester is outdated. How do you find that?
I tell them all the time in class that it is important that they take a writing class, and I specifically mentioned John Affleck, and I mentioned you specifically. I tell them how important it is to take Steve's class with TV. And then I said, of course, there's this class. I tell them all the time that versatility is going to be something that's going to be critical for them moving forward, and they have to be good in many different areas and I give them the example of, I said, even if you're stable in TV, I give them the example of Carl Ravitch. And I said, Carl Ravitch is doing baseball tonight for I don't know how many years, 10, 15, 20 years. And the show got bagged. They decided they're not going to do it anymore. So instead of losing his job, how does he reinvent himself? Well, he's doing Sunday Night Baseball. He's doing SEC basketball. I said he made sure he had versatility. And so that's what I try to stress to them early on, that it's how important it is in versatility and to not just limit themselves to doing one thing while they're here in school.
That's a great point. This weekend I did a lot of mulching. I'm a big podcast guy. I listened to two of them that address what you talk about. I was listening to Pay Dirt, where Steve Jones was the guest with his former student Hannafin and McGloin. And both of those guys are multimedia guys. Tom pivoted from entertainment wrestling. And then the other one, I listened to The Ringer with Bill Simmons, who's really, I mean, you being a New England guy, he's done everything in the industry, right?
Yeah. No, and see, and that's, you're talking, when you're giving advice like that, the advice I'm giving them is, how do you survive, like when things don't go right, you have something to fall back on. You also, if you have versatility, I don't want them to be the jack of all trades and the master of none, but at the same time, you give yourself at least more value to the company because you can do more elements.
No, and I think when you're looking at, the guys you talk to, Matt and Tom are multiple platforms. They talk to you on the podcast. They're doing play-by-play. Matt does Sirius. Tom does some wrestling, but he's also now getting back into play-by-play. Mm-hmm. It's those type of things. Those type of whether you're calling a Spikes game, or you're doing a coach's show, or whether you're doing a podcast or you're doing a radio show. I didn't even mention play-by-play, right?
Right. Always a pleasure, Mike. Great work as always. It's something I always admire, that you do a great job of thinking outside the box, and I think those who read it or those who listen to it benefit from it. So thanks so much.
Well, thanks. Now I'm going to Google this 1859 A's game. Now I want to hear the audio of that. Had Edison invented the phonograph at that point?
I was just doing it on a megaphone in the ballpark.
There you go. Some things never change.
That's right.
Thanks, Steve Jones.
Thanks, Mike.